It's a marvellous opportunity for me to stand before you and speak today. This is the third of the roadshows that I've done. I started in Rocky on Monday. We did two. We went to Bundaberg on Tuesday, and now we're here. And I'd like to start also by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague Peter Markham, who's sitting over there in the audience over there at the moment. Peter will be with me down the back at booth 1. In fact, Peter will be taking carriage of this presentation in the afternoon session. So if you want to wait for the real act, stick around and listen to Peter as we go further on. So thank you, Sharon, too, for the opportunity to present today. People often ask me what it is about procurement that gets me very, very excited. My team is responsible for supporting the procurement of all of the state schools across the state. So that's 1,254 schools across an area that geographically would stretch from London to Moscow if you were to lay a map of Queensland across Europe. And what excites me about procurement is partly the scale, because that's an enormous operation to be working on, but also the impact, because when you're working in procurement and you're supporting the Department of Education, what you're doing is supporting the delivery of educational outcomes in schools. So as a parent, that's something that hits me right in the heart. I can get behind that, because when we do a good job in procurement and we work with our partners to produce a great outcome, what we're doing is making things better in schools and making things better for the kids and the future families in Queensland. So for me, you can't come up with anything that's really a higher goal or a higher purpose. And I tell my team that really what we're doing is supporting the future of Queensland schools. So it's a fantastic operation to be part of, and something that I'm very, very passionate about. Of course, it helps too that we're able to operate on such a large scale, because the numbers are truly astronomical when you think about the buying power of the state of Queensland and the role that the Department of Education plays in it. I would encourage you to pick up a copy of the procurement statement down the back, because it's got some really, really interesting numbers in it. And if I think about what the Department of Education does, that's approximately 1,254 schools, 3,500 buyers scattered around the state. We're responsible for a little over half of the state's construction expenditure. So we're going to be spending over $2.3 billion in construction over the next 12 months across the state. So that's across all of those sites. There are a couple of flagship programs in there, and I'll come to one of those in a minute. But in addition to that, we're going to spend another $87 million through our school infrastructure improvement programs. We've got another $150 million in remediation and repatriation projects for schools. That's the stuff which is directly accessible to local businesses. We're talking about the works on the schools that is everything from fixing the path to repainting the admin block to building a fence. We've got a further $75 million approximately in direct-to-market maintenance activities for schools. So these are not the projects that are necessarily aimed at the big end of town. I'm not expecting the very large organisations to bid for this. In fact, what we want is for schools to partner with firms in their local area. We want them to be working with you, with businesses in the communities, because you're going to be employing people in the communities, and that's a really important thing for us. Typically, and certainly in some of the smaller regional communities, the school is one of the largest economic engines in the town. They spend a lot of money, they employ a lot of people, and it's really, really important for us to partner with the businesses that are supporting the local communities in which we operate. And that's a real feature for us moving forward, because it's part of the government's drive. We are very invested in working with small and medium enterprises. We're very invested in working with Indigenous enterprises and making sure, as Minister De Brenni said this morning, that the considerable procurement expenditure of the Queensland Government stays in Queensland for the benefit of Queensland businesses and Queensland families. And that's something that is just part of what we do on an everyday basis. So one of the things I want to talk about is the Building Future Skills program. So we're going to spend nearly $2 billion on new school infrastructure in the coming 12 months. In fact, there are, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, 4 major tenders in the market right now for new schools. And if I think about the work that we've been doing over the last 24 months, we've been building 6 to 8 new schools every year. And we'll continue to build 6 to 8 new schools every year for the next 6 years. So that's an incredible investment by the government in building new infrastructure to support the education of people who are coming to Queensland. And fortunately for everybody in this room, the majority of that new investment is happening in the southeast corner of the state, because that's where the population growth is. So this is a very, very significant program, and the Building Future Schools Fund has $2.6 billion earmarked for future work. and that will be topped up on an ongoing basis by Cabinet to support the investment in this infrastructure. And that's a really, really important program, and it's the one that I want to start by talking to you about. We often deliver our new schools in stages too. We don't sit down and say, great, you know what, we need 1,000 new students, 1,000 seat school for new students south of Springwood. We'll build stage 1. We might support it for 150 or 200 students. And then we'll come in a year later and we'll build stage 2. And then we'll build stage 3 and stage 4 and so on. That by the time you get to the end of the completed school, you've already started working on the next catchment 2 years prior. And that's a really important thing for us, because what that allows us to do is build that longer term engagement with the partners that we're working with. And we really want to work with businesses who are successful and do a good job, because that's what our clients expect. And often what you'll find is that engagement flows over multiple contracts. Yes, we could go off and deliver a $110 million contract, but it's often better and I think more accessible to medium-sized enterprises to start with contracts that are a little bit further down the chain. They might not be quite so scary for a business to get into. The complexity is not always the same, but it also allows for much greater and much broader engagement with the business community. And so we like to break these things up when and where we can. Often the construction of a new school will also intersect with a number of other infrastructure works around in the community. So we want to make sure that the partners that we're dealing with are experienced and comfortable working with the community. There's a lot of disruption, be it new roads, new transport infrastructure, new water infrastructure, a whole range of things that go on when you're building a school, not to mention the disruption to nearby businesses. And the partners that we deal with are often on the front line working with the communities on our behalf to ensure that everything is going smoothly, that we are disrupting things as little as possible, and that we're trying to generate the maximum benefit in the area in which the work is taking place. That's the key for us, to make sure that that investment stays as close as it possibly can to support the jobs in the area where the work is being done. And that's one of the reasons we're so nitpicky about making sure that the firms that we deal with are up to date on their reporting on things like training hours, that the apprenticeships that they are generating through the award of these contracts are real, that it leads to sustained employment, and that it leads to improved opportunities for people within the communities in which we're working. Again, a significant thing for the department and a key platform in the government's broader agenda for the Buy Queensland approach. So another thing that you'll notice about tendering for the Department of Education is that safety is really right at the front of mind. Building sites are dangerous places inherently, but we are absolutely focused on ensuring the safety of our staff, our students and our visitors, and the workers who come on our sites to deliver the projects. You'll notice in our tendering documentation something that's a little bit different this year. There are separate standalone questions and sections within the non-price criteria that talk about safety, that allow you the opportunity to demonstrate your commitment to creating and sustaining a safe work environment, that will allow you to talk about your safety compliance history and all of the things that you do to ensure, through induction processes, through tool talks, through safety monitoring systems, that you are aligned with us on this as a priority. It's a very, very important thing. In fact, it's one of the things that if you aren't able to tell a convincing story on, will, as Michael said this morning, and thank you for a fabulous presentation, Michael, by the way, you've actually covered most of mine, so I'm going to skip through a bunch of slides. No, honestly, I won't. But safety, I kid you not, is very, very important to us, and it's something we take very, very seriously. Please do use the opportunity to tell us in detail about how you will enable the department to meet this priority and deliver safe work on our sites. We want to know how you will help us de-risk these projects. De-risk it in terms of safety, obviously that's a great one, but also de-risk it in terms of the supply chain that you're going to bring to the department. How are you going to work on our behalf with other Queensland companies to make sure that that investment stays here? How will you help the department meet the government's objectives around creating opportunities for Indigenous businesses to participate in the Queensland economy by partnering with them to deliver portions of the project? How will you help ensure that things run on time and on track? Because unlike a lot of building projects, most of ours have a hard start date. There is no win for anybody if we promise that a new school will open on day one of term one in the following year and it doesn't. We go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that our projects start on time, and we expect that our partners will be able to help us facilitate that. So how you will help us de-risk that through your good processes, through your engagement with key organisations, including employee stakeholder organisations or your supply partners. How will you ensure that critical supplies are going to reach the site on time, despite the challenges of international logistics, blockages through things like COVID? What are you going to be able to bring to the table to assure us that you're going to be the best partner to get these projects done so that we can then support the communities in which we're operating? Very, very important for us. A little word too about work history. Obviously, people tell me a lot, look, it's really hard to get work for the Department of Education because you ask me what I've done for you before, but I can never get work for you because I haven't done any work for you before. Well, it doesn't have to be work necessarily for us. It could be work that you've done for a similar organisation. When we're asking you about your prior experience or your competency in this space, tell us about the work that you've done for an independent school or a hall or a similarly aligned project that shows us that you understand the sorts of issues that are going to be prevalent on the sites in which we're operating, that shows you know how to partner with organisations like the department who are passionate about safety, who are keen to make sure that things are delivered on time. Don't be the organisation that lowballs with a price and comes to us with a variation after the fact. The lowest price is not necessarily the winning bid because the non-price criteria are significant for us and play a key part of the decision-making process. Yes, obviously we do have tender documents and they are templated, and as Michael said earlier, there is space allocated within those documents. It's an indication of the quality and size of the response that we're looking for. Please do take the time to fill them in. Please do provide all of the information that we ask for. We do receive a lot of tenders, and it is important for us that we evaluate them fairly and honestly and transparently. So we will be looking at the tender documents for the information, but you shouldn't assume that we have any knowledge of you apart from what you're writing in these documents. So it is critically important for you to fill the documents out completely, and I would absolutely encourage you to participate in some of the tender writing workshops if you haven't had the opportunity to do so. They are very, very good. And as Michael said, what's your compelling difference? What is going to make you better from the other 5 tenders we've received, sometimes from local organisations? Why are you going to be the best partner for the department? We want to know that, and we will take the time to read your responses, and we will take the time to evaluate them very, very carefully. And obviously, if we need more information, we will come back to you and talk to you about that and make sure that we get to the very best possible decision before we reach the end of the contract award process. So a couple of other observations for us. We are absolutely committed to increasing the number of small to medium enterprises in our supply chain and the number of Indigenous businesses with whom we have contracts and relationships. That is absolutely one of our top priorities because we recognise that that's the cornerstone on which much of the economy of this state has been built. We want to know who you are, we want to know where you are, and we want to know how we can work with you. When we talk about local benefits, it means that we will genuinely prefer to use local contractors within 125 kilometres of where that site or that work is being delivered. So please use that as a selling point to your advantage. Partner with other firms around you to bid on some of the work. You don't have to be someone who can deliver the project whole. And here's a tip that I often give to people in the session afterwards. When you go onto the Department of Education website or you go onto the Queensland Government Contracts Directory, which was very thoughtfully linked earlier on in the session, you can look up a list of supply arrangements. One of the things that the Department of Education does is manage a number of supply arrangements on behalf of the rest of government. And a great example of that is our project managers arrangement. So there are 42 project management firms that are on that arrangement that are typically going to get a lot of work from government. Make your business known to those partners. They're located all around the state in regional areas. Make sure that you have done the work in introducing yourselves to those partners because that relationship, it may be just the very thing that gives you a key edge when we're asking one of those organisations to run a tender on our behalf. So a relatively small tender might be run at a school by one of these organisations. So if you've got that relationship with them, you're one step further ahead to getting the contract with the department or with the school. And I would seriously encourage you to explore that relationship and build those partnerships yourselves because that's another way that you're going to come to work with us. Obviously, we make sure that we want to deal only with suppliers who have the very highest ethical standards. The Queensland Government Ethical Supplier Mandate and Ethical Supplier Thresholds have been core parts of our procurement policy for a couple of years now, and we will be asking you questions in the tender documentation about how well you have performed, how you have subscribed to both of those key documents for us. It's also important to us that we are dealing with organisations that understand the nature of public procurement. When we are responsible to the public for spending the taxpayers' dollars, my money, your family's money, it's critical to us that we do so fairly, transparently and honestly. We will ask you about conflicts of interest in the tender documentation. That's not because we want to pry or we want to rule someone out. It's again so that we can de-risk the process that we are engaged in. Just because you know someone or someone on your bid team might have a partner or a friend who works for the Department of Education doesn't mean that you will be ruled out. These things are easily managed if they're declared up front. More often than not, it's not actually a problem. It's only a problem if it's discovered later on and we haven't been able to do anything about it. There are many ways that you can deal with conflicts of interest, and I would again encourage you, please be as fulsome and honest in those declarations as you can. It's much easier to deal with it at the beginning of the process than get to the end where you're about to award a contract and discover that there's an improper relationship that could give rise to a perceived conflict. And that will delay the award of contract and may even potentially derail some offers if the conflict is serious and it hasn't been appropriately disclosed. Please tell us, and if you are in any doubt, pick up the phone, talk to the tendering contract, email the contract address that are provided with our tender documents, and just have a conversation with my team or Peter's team. And we will do our best to steer you through that part of the process. It's really, really easy. It's nothing to be too scared about. Now, look, this is a terrible slide, and I apologise for its inclusion. But one of the things I've put it in there just is to give you a bit of a feel for where some of the projects are happening. So right now, if you're looking at those bars and you're saying, OK, well, I'm a small business, I probably don't want to tackle a $50 million project, but I'd be interested in bidding on tenders up to $20 million. You can look at those brown bars and see that we've got quite a lot of projects going on over the next couple of years. Or if you're looking for something a little bit bigger, maybe in the $20 to $40 million, you can look at some of those other ones there. But all of this information is available to you on the forward procurement pipeline, which was linked earlier on in the presentation. That is a wonderful source of information for you about where work is coming from. And I've already had a couple of conversations with some potential suppliers today about ways that you can ensure you are tapped into that information, that you can get advance warning of when these tenders are coming to market. A couple of really obvious things. Please make sure that you are registered on Q tenders. If you are an organisation that is participating in the Queensland Government's pre-qualified contractor list, make sure your PQC details are accurate and up to date. Make sure your insurances are up to date. Please, please, please make sure that the email address that you have provided to which the automated emails will come is correct and that it is monitored. I can't tell you how many times we've spoken to firms about, why didn't you bid on a tender? Oh, well, we didn't get the email. That was because the email address was wrong. The guy who was receiving it to his personal email has left the company, or the partner's out of the country, or you were on leave. I appreciate leave is an important thing. Everybody needs to take time away from the business. But if you're going on leave and you're monitoring those tender emails on your personal account, have someone else in the firm read your email during that period. It's really, really important that you are actively monitoring the way that these opportunities come to market. And again, monitor that contracts directory to see the contracts that are awarded. Look, I think I've gone through all of my slides relatively quickly. I would be absolutely delighted to take questions from people now or after the session. I don't think we probably have too much time for them now. But I will be standing at booth 1 at the back over there, and we'd love to hear from you and talk to you about opportunities to partner with the Department of Education. I hope you found this useful. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to stand in front of you.